Good morning and welcome back to the NADA live stage. My name is Jared Allen, I'm with NADA. You know the adage that the dealership that you walk into today is not your grandfather's dealership, it's not even your father's dealership, is never more true than it is right now. We're very pleased today to have two gentlemen who are defining what it means to have a modern dealership. So I'm very happy to introduce Trevor Guile, managing partner with Motor Cars Honda in Cleveland Heights, Ohio, and Russ Humberton, dealer principal of Beaverton Toyota in Beaverton, Oregon. Thank you guys for being here, appreciate it. So Trevor, I want to start with you.
Sure.
Motor Cars Honda is the first carbon neutral dealership in the US. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. So what we did is we had to offset the carbon footprint for every new and used car we sold, our entire building, our parts truck, rental truck, all of our employees' cars, and my personal travel for the year. So basically, if Mother Nature was looking down at our dealership, everything that was tied to CO2 coming out, we offset. And we did that by installing the largest singular structure solar panel in the country. That's really tough to say. And then we did LED lights, heating and cooling unit called VRF, window tints, along with a bunch of other green initiatives. We even did bicycles while people were in for service to encourage them instead of taking loaner cars. But it's something kind of just kept on growing and growing in our dealership.
How did you get started with this concept? What triggered this?
We're like most every other dealership in the way that we weren't necessarily trying to be green. It was something that we were trying to solve a problem. And our problem was that we had a parking garage that had about 100 cars on it and a 90 below it. And every winter, since we're in Cleveland, we get that little white stuff coming down that we were plowing. And what was happening, it was damaging the parking garage and pieces were falling on the cars below there. And we were putting 100,000 every couple years onto it. And so a salesperson comes to us and says, hey, why don't we put solar panels up over there to keep the snow off the cars? And then that kind of grew to the point we thought it was crazy in Cleveland, Ohio to have solar panels. But once we started putting the pencil to it, saw the tax credit, we realized that it was something that was going to work for us. And then from there, it just kind of kept on growing and growing. And our employees really started buying into it and started creating a different culture in our dealership. And so now it's something that we've learned that our county is in the top 10 worst air qualities in the country, and we've been able to be a part of a huge movement going green.
I want to ask you more about dealership culture, how this change impacted that. I actually want to ask both of you about this, but Russ, I want to turn to you for a second. Beaverton Toyota has been very active in moving transactions toward online platforms. Can you talk a little bit about what you've been doing there?
Sure. We developed our own software 4 years ago in-house. We have our own software company now that's separate, and there was a number of reasons why we did it. One of them is to make it as simple as possible for the guest, even online, to be able to do the entire transaction and have everything digital, all the paperwork done digitally, and really have the exact same process at the dealership that is online, and really there shouldn't be a difference to it in our opinion. So that was one of the reasons we did that.
So when you talk about moving towards online, is this outwardly focused towards customers, or are you implementing some of these things internally with your employees and how they interface with customers themselves?
Well, when we made a few years ago, we were we're a fairly large dealership, and so but we decided to make a change that we thought the right thing to do for not just our guests, but for all of our coworkers, was to go to a one person, one price. So we made that change, and that was a big change for us. We developed the software along with that, but in order to implement that change, that was the culture aspect that you're alluding to, was the most important thing we had to do. And to this day, getting that buy-in is the most important thing that we work on all the time. It isn't so much, yeah, you got to have the software there, but it's more about what is engaging your coworkers and inspiring them. That's been our focus.
Trevor, how has the things that you've been working on impacted your culture?
Sure. I think one of the things when people look at green initiatives, a lot of times they take a capital budgeting approach and they look and say, what's this going to cost? How many cars can I sell? And what's my electric bills? What we found is that one of the best things for us was the culture that it created and the hiring. It's something that we found that millennials really want to work for companies that are socially acceptable and eco-friendly. And so when we did this, now I'd say about 75 to 80% of the people we're hiring just happen to be millennials, and we find them coming to want to work for us, which is very different for the car dealership to bring in that group of people. And we find that they are the fastest moving up into new levels in our dealership.
All right, so now the question's about business, right? So how has this affected business in terms of not only who you're selling to, but your repeat customers, service, F&I, parts, et cetera, across the board?
When we did it, we figured that there would probably be about 10 to 15% of people that would put being green would be a major factor, one or two of the differentiators that they'd want to buy. But I'd say for about 75, 80% of the people, it's going to be the third or fourth, we call the diffs. Where you're located and price are always normally going to be in the top two that they're going to do. This will be the third or fourth. And the way we use it is like the video that they just played earlier. We have that and a couple other videos that talk about the number of trees that we save. And so when people are waiting for a test drive or they're through our dealership, they're able to see different videos talking about what we're doing, how many pounds of carbon we saved, setting off 50 to 70% of our energy bill. And so we educate the people instead of having the Oprah show on or something like that in the back TVs while people are waiting. We have things talking about what we're doing in our company that's unique.
Russ?
You know, we did go through initially that called the J curve, right? It was a little bit of it was a major transition, and that took around 6 months to get through. A lot of work, but by all measurements and metrics, it's been all positives. Whether it's increased volume, gross, retention. We've gone slowly. We've gone from about $150,000 a month in advertising budget down to 35, and so we keep that money, and then we allot a good portion of that just into the guest experience, and so we save money. We don't spend all the $100,000+ a month in savings, but we actually invest a good chunk of that into R&D, culture initiatives, collaboration workshops with our coworkers. We've had great luck with millennials. I know millennials are tough in a lot of ways for a lot of us, but the thing that, you know, they are what they are, and the thing that they love is to be a part of something, and if they understand the vision, they'll work, they'll go after it. They don't like confrontation, but you just have to make it easy for them. And make them genuinely engage with their guest versus selling. We've gone away from selling. We don't really sell anything, which is strange, right? But the bottom line is it's less expensive to have somebody who you're asking about the bottom line. A lot more money drops to the bottom line. You don't have to compensate it the same way that you did before. You have to work a little harder on the culture and the collaboration end of things, but you actually let more money fall to the bottom line.
You know, both of you talked about culture and sales. Other dealers are thinking about this and thinking about going in these directions. Some of them have been able to do it, others have not. What advice would you pass on to dealers who are thinking about how to branch out, how to become more modern, maybe even thinking about implementing things like being the first at something, whether it's carbon neutral, green dealership, et cetera. What advice would you pass on to other dealers who are looking ahead to the future the way you guys are sort of already there?
Sure. I'd say that with the green initiative or targeting other areas, you can focus on social media loves these different things. When they hear the first or they hear somebody doing something different than they expected, it goes really well, and it's a very cheap way to do with short blast videos on there. I'd say for millennials, when you're bringing millennials in, one of the best ways I ever put is people think that millennials are tech savvy. They're actually tech dependent. What we find is that they've grown up with technology, but if you tell them to fix their iPad, they have no idea what to do with it. And so it's just a different culture that if you assume that you're going to hand them the keys to the technology, that they're going to take to the next level, they're not going to do that unless they have the proper coaching and training as the same as any other employee.
Russ?
Sure, you know, it's a good question. We get a dealer visit once or twice a month from various dealers from around the country and some of the OEMs even, and it's always very interesting, the conversations, and near the end of the day, it's usually a full day, the most common sort of remark that we hear is, hey, that really is great for you and your market, but it wouldn't work in our market. And then that leads into a conversation, and that conversation is generally about, well, what do you find is most important to you as a dealer? It's not so much about, in my opinion, about being first. I don't really think that matters. But I think what does matter is, what do you believe in? What do you want your people to believe in? And what do you want your guests to experience? And if you start with that, and I think you'll come to a lot of the same conclusions we came to, because it's 100% what's best for the guest, and it has to be that way. And so it isn't about being first. It's about what's your first priority.
So, and you got to get the buy-in from the employees, because if you don't have buy-in from the employees, it's not going to work. And that's with some of the changes you make. You might lose some people that have been with you for a long time, just because that's not the vision that they want to see, or they know that they can go work somewhere else on there. And so it's something that was one of the things that we had to learn, is that it's okay to lose sometimes somebody that's been with you a while if they don't share your vision.
So I want to ask about some of the other initiatives that you're thinking about. We talked about being carbon neutral and moving toward as much online as you possibly can, but I gather that that's not everything that you're presently doing or even thinking about doing. So Trevor, I'll start with you. What else is going on in your dealership?
Whew, that's a lot. One of the major things that we've done that we've got a focus on is service. Express service, most people don't care about express service, or it's something that they don't invest a lot of money in. We invested a whole lot, and we built the express service lane, the first one like this in the world. But it's picture 100 feet long with belts like car washes that pull cars from station to station. 6 stations that we do multi-point inspection, tire rotation, balance, oil change, and we can do. We were doing about 30 cars an hour. The machine has the ability to do on there. And what it does is it also creates a path where the guests can actually walk and interact. There's screens that they can ask questions. The technician can take a video and show exactly what's wrong. So the whole Wizard of Oz, the man behind the curtain feel, we've eliminated. So there's not one spot where a guest car goes that they won't see it. And kind of the way we came up with this is that we looked at, why were we losing business? Why were they going to Jiffy Lubes? Why are they going to Conrad's when we have technicians that focus 90% of their work on one vehicle? We have better tools, we have able to do warranty work, and we narrowed it down to 3 things: speed, transparency, and price is why they leave. And so the express lane, we're able to get them out in less than 30 minutes by doing all these different ones. Transparency, they're able to walk and interact. The advisors use tablets as opposed to having desks. And then the price, we've looked at as value. If we're able to provide more for that, then they're able to operate. And we kind of treat the express lane is filled with junior technicians, with one senior technician that inspects the work. So it's kind of like if you're at a doctor's office, you always go to the nurse first that takes your weight and takes your signs. That's what we wanted to do, is we wanted to take the work from our senior technicians, the easy work, and move that to a lower level technician, and have the senior technicians focus on what's going to generate the most ROI for the dealership.
Russ?
Sure. Similar to what Trevor's working on in the fixed operations, you know, one thing I think everybody in the room can agree on is our market, right, is only going to become more and more necessitate efficiency in our operations. We all know at some point things are going to change in some way. We're not quite sure exactly how, but we know for sure that we have to maximize our efficiency, just as he's doing in the fixed ops. On the sales end, our goal is to, for one example, our goal is to be able to make the transaction itself require only 2 people, compared to now, if you think about it, you've got typically at most dealerships, you have a salesperson, a closer, a finance manager, a sales manager, maybe a finance director, a clerical people that are working the deals, various things in the business office. If you count all that up, you're talking 7, 8, maybe more people on every single deal. Our goal is to get it down to 2. Basically, you have somebody who does the transaction, the entire transaction, and then you have somebody who verifies. They just verify that everything's correct. If you think about the things that happen in processing the car deal, 90 99% of it is a transaction that you can mimic every single time. So our goal is to get there. Right now we're not at 2, but we're at about 4. We want to get it down to 2. The second part of that, though, and a lot of people say, well, gee, what you're doing is taking the human element out of this. Well, that's actually completely opposite of the case. By making it so simple and getting all of the rote work, if you will, out of the transaction, the mundane things, we actually make it something that brings a much better experience and engagement from our sales consultant with that guest than it could ever be now, because there's so many things they have to think about now, and you've got all these 7 people thinking of so many things that are not related to making that guest experience any better.
Everyone likes to ask about the future. Everyone likes to offer their opinions on the future, but you two are pretty well positioned. And I do want to get your thoughts on what you think the future of automotive retail looks like. We won't say in 25 years, but 5 or 10 years from now. Where do you think things are headed? And what should dealers be really on the lookout for? And Trevor, I'll start with you.
I think you have to look at is what's going to make your customers want to come back to you. What are you doing differently? As the market changes, more and more big competitors can come in and figure Amazon and Google having to enter $2 trillion companies. If they got in the market, how are you going to be able to survive? What are you going to do differently? And that's where our service is open from 5:30 a.m. to 3 a.m. We go after people that have extended hours. We have the express service lane, the transparency, the green initiative. Those are things that is different than a typical culture, but I think we have to learn to adapt and speed the process and make it easier and faster. And so when we were doing it, there's a lot of things that came up. Like, we had no idea how to market ourselves, so we had to create a marketing company. We had no idea how to eliminate paperwork with the process, and so we had to build a whole rental software to digitally manage our fleet to make sure it was lined up on there. And so there's a lot of things that you come across, but I think dealers got to look at other ways to either cut costs or find ways to additional revenue on there. I was just looking at an article that talked about how Walmart just entered selling groceries online, and they predict that right now 23% of people are buying their groceries. They're going to buy, in the next 5 to 7 years, 70% of people they're projecting are going to be buying their groceries online. Walmart's now added 250 points to sell cars. That's a game changer. All of a sudden that takes off where they're doing additional on there, and so we've got to be prepared to find ways to wrap our arms around our customers.
Very similar. I think we all know that it's going to become a more efficient marketplace. I believe that margins will continue to get squeezed. I think most importantly, the biggest impact that we're going to see in those shrinking margins is in F&I products. Millennials, as they become the major buying force in the public, they're not going to stand for sitting through the hour-long presentation in the finance department, et cetera. I think we're going to see vastly shrinking margins in F&I, and I think we all have to be prepared for that. And how we do that, I think, again, is just through efficiency. And I believe that the other thing that's going to be a challenge is we have to truly engage both the guest and the coworker, and I think that even comes down to some entertainment. Why would somebody want to go out of their way to come into a dealership and buy a car when it really can be done mostly all online? We have to give them a reason, and we need to give our coworkers a reason as well to be inspired by that. It can't just simply be that I'm here to do a transaction with the guest. What is it that I actually bring to the table so that the guest wants to come in and meet with me and continue forever in our industry? The number one reason a customer says that they go do business with a dealership is because of the salesperson, and we need to make sure that it stays that way.
Yeah, I agree. You got to make it fun. Like, we added delivery bays for when people pick up their car. We found that the satisfaction obviously dipped down after finance, so we built these huge delivery bays with fog machines, the lights and music to get them back excited again. In service, we built a giant kids dealership that looks exactly a replica of a Honda dealership with the blue wave and the blue canister on it, and it's got racetrack where kids can build Lego cars, a service garage where they can touch and feel parts of cars. They've got Mario Kart where they can sit in racing chairs, 500-gallon aquarium. So we've got to have excitement that people want to come into the dealership. So that was a good point.
What a great way to get everything started this week. Thank you both for being here very much. Thanks everyone for tuning in and coming. And please stick around because we've got workshop previews going on throughout the day. So we'll be back in a few minutes. Thank you.
Good job, man. That was great.
Awesome job. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. That was great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Whoops.